The strangest thing about a car losing power is that it rarely happens all at once. There's no explosion, no dramatic breakdown on the side of the road. One day you just realize the throttle doesn't feel as sharp. Hills feel heavier. Acceleration feels hesitant, like the engine is thinking instead of reacting. And most drivers accept that feeling as age. They tell themselves, it's a high-mileage car. This is normal. But here's the uncomfortable truth. In many cases, the engine isn't tired. It's disoriented. Modern engines don't run on muscle alone anymore. They run on information. Every breath of air, every drop of fuel, every spark of ignition is decided by sensors quietly feeding data to the brain of the car. When those sensors get dirty, even slightly, the engine doesn't fail. It miscalculates. And miscalculation feels exactly like aging. Today, I want to take you behind the scenes of something most drivers never see. Sensors you can clean at home. Sensors smaller than your finger that quietly steal power, smoothness, and fuel economy when they're contaminated, and just as quietly give it back when they're restored. Stay with me until the end, because the final sensor on this list is ignored even by experienced workshops, yet it can make a perfectly healthy engine look completely broken on a diagnostic scan. Imagine the engine as a symphony. Pistons rise and fall. Valves open and close. Sparks fire in perfect rhythm. Now imagine the conductor's watch is smeared with oil. That's what happens when timing data becomes dirty. One of the most misunderstood pieces in that timing puzzle is the camshaft position sensor. This sensor sits calmly near the top of the engine, often overlooked because it doesn't look important. But its job is critical. It tells the engine computer exactly where the camshaft is at every moment, which means it controls valve timing, fuel injection sequencing, and smooth power delivery at low RPM. Over time, heat and oil vapor creep into places they shouldn't. A thin film of oil settles on the magnetic tip of the sensor. It doesn't seem dramatic, but even a microscopic delay in signal can shift timing just enough to confuse the engine. The car begins to hesitate when you accelerate. Idle becomes uneven. Fuel consumption creeps upward, and the driver assumes the engine is simply old. Pull the sensor out, and the story becomes visible. That dark sheen on the tip isn't normal wear, it's interference. Cleaning it properly is simple and precise. The sensor is unplugged, gently removed, sprayed with the correct electronic cleaner, and wiped softly without scratching the magnetic surface. Once dry and reinstalled, the engine suddenly feels more confident. Throttle response tightens. Acceleration becomes predictable again. Testing data has shown that even slight timing inaccuracies caused by contamination can noticeably affect efficiency. 10 minutes of careful cleaning can undo years of silent performance loss. Now let's move deeper into how the engine understands effort. Every time you press the accelerator, the engine asks one question: how hard am I working right now? The answer often comes from the manifold absolute pressure sensor, or MAP sensor. While some systems measure incoming air directly, this sensor reads pressure inside the intake manifold, allowing the engine to calculate load, ignition timing, and fueling, especially under acceleration or climbing. Inside that sensor is a tiny port. And tiny ports have a big enemy: oil vapor and carbon mist. Over thousands of miles, residue builds up, slowing how quickly the sensor reacts to changes in pressure. The engine still runs, but it reacts late. That delay feels like sluggish throttle response, hesitation at low speeds, and a strange heaviness under load. Cleaning the MAP sensor is not about force. It's about restraint. The sensor is removed carefully. Nothing is inserted into the port. No wires, no pins, no brushes. Instead, short bursts of proper cleaner flush contamination out naturally. Once dry and reinstalled, the engine regains clarity. Gear changes feel smoother. Acceleration becomes linear again. Many technicians quietly include this step in preventive maintenance because they've seen how dramatically it restores drivability in high-mileage cars. But air and pressure are only part of the equation. The engine also needs feedback from the exhaust, confirmation that combustion is happening correctly. Oxygen sensors live in one of the harshest environments imaginable. Heat, soot, unburned fuel, all constantly attack the sensing element. Their role is simple but unforgiving: keep the air-fuel mixture near perfection. When they respond slowly, the engine doesn't know it's running rich or lean until it's too late. As carbon coats the sensor tip, reaction time slows. The engine compensates with extra fuel. Fuel economy drops. Exhaust smells heavier. Acceleration feels lazy. Many drivers immediately assume the sensor is dead. But in many cases, it's just dirty. With the exhaust completely cool, the sensor can be removed carefully, wiring untouched. Only the sensing tip is cleaned, never the body. Carbon dissolves. Deposits loosen. After drying naturally, the sensor often wakes back up. Independent testing has shown that a surprising number of aging oxygen sensors regain acceptable response speed after cleaning. Not forever, but long enough to restore mileage and avoid unnecessary replacement. Now we reach the sensor that makes mechanics nervous. The crankshaft position sensor is the heartbeat monitor of the engine. Without it, nothing happens. Spark timing, injector pulse, engine speed, all depend on this signal. And yet, this sensor can partially fail in ways that look catastrophic. It reads a rotating wheel attached to the crankshaft, counting teeth with magnetic precision. Over time, metallic debris, microscopic iron particles, brake dust, where residue, are pulled toward the sensor tip like filings to a magnet. That buildup increases the gap between the sensor and the rotating wheel. The signal weakens, becomes erratic. The engine may still run, but diagnostic trouble codes begin piling up. Random misfires across multiple cylinders. Correlation errors between crank and cam signals. Faults that suggest stretched timing chains or internal engine failure. In reality, the engine is fine. The signal isn't. Remove the sensor and the problem often reveals itself immediately. A tip coated in metallic sludge. Clean it properly. Reinstall it with correct torque. Verify clearance. Suddenly, the engine behaves like nothing was ever wrong. What looked like a terminal diagnosis turns out to be a communication issue. And finally, we arrive at the sensor that quietly causes more unnecessary repairs than almost any other. The engine coolant temperature sensor doesn't just report heat. It influences fuel mixture, ignition timing, cooling fan operation, and engine protection strategies. When it lies, even intermittently, it sends the entire system into confusion. The most dangerous failures aren't constant. They're random. The sensor might read perfectly cold, then suddenly spike to impossible temperatures while the engine is barely warm. The ECU reacts aggressively, altering fuel delivery, triggering fault codes, adjusting timing. Scan tools light up with thermostat errors, misfire codes, voltage faults. Technicians replace parts, thermostats, coils, injectors, and the problem remains. Live data tells the truth. Coolant temperature should rise smoothly, steadily, logically. Any sudden jump or drop exposes the sensor immediately. That tiny component, often ignored, can make a healthy engine look like a disaster on paper. This is why understanding matters more than guessing. Engines don't just wear out. They lose clarity when information degrades. Clean data restores confidence. If this changed how you look at your car, tap like so this reaches more drivers. Share it with someone who thinks their engine is just old. Subscribe for more deep, practical car care insights. And comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I read every single one.